Greetings everyone, welcome back once again to another episode of Spliced In Later. It's a very dark and gloomy day as I record this. Not much light in my house, miserable outside. The perfect time to stay in and binge watch a show. But what show, I hear you ask? Well, maybe I'll talk about one right now and give you an idea. So no reviews this week. Plenty of reviews have come up over the last few weeks though here on Spliced In Later. Plenty of movies for the month of March. Plenty good stuff to see. If you're looking for movies to watch, if you need some reviews to help convince you, check out my Creed review, my John Wick review, Dungeons and Dragons, or even Shazam. All good stuff for all different reasons and all worth a gander. I didn't see Scream 6, but I hear that's pretty good too. So you can't go wrong if you go to the movies at the moment. As such, there's nothing for me to see this week. Stick around next week for the long anticipated review of the Super Mario Brothers movie. Whether that's good or not, only time will tell. So this week is just a standard episode, and I didn't have a lot of time to prepare because I got a lot of things going on at the moment, which has hampered my ability to prep episodes very far in advance. So as a result, we're just going to fall back into the usual stuff we talk about here on the show, adding to my ever-growing series of episodes, and hope that I've got enough on the brain to make it to 20 minutes. Yes, we are once again diving back into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU. I don't really need to go into why I do this, but if you have clicked on this episode because of the content specifically and don't know, the MCU is my favorite franchise in film. It's being tested with the recent trials and tribulations of Phase 4 and 5 and quality over quantity and all of that stuff. But suffice it to say, about 90% of it I really love. Mainly for the ever-expanding cinematic universe where we have different stories and characters across different media, all connected and all able to exist, usually on their own, without having to always rely on an ever-building story and referencing each other every single second of every single day. We're pushing it now as we go into Phase 5, this new approach to having multiple movies every year and multiple shows on Disney Plus that are all canon and all relevant to one another and all building towards Kang the Conqueror, all must-see television, a lot of stuff focusing now on the development of the larger story rather than actually just making a solid, simple, standalone thing that can exist on its own. Means we're getting some more misses than hits these days. I really hope Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 coming out in May can shake that. But back in the day, back in the old times, which is what we do on this MCU series of series of episodes here on Spliced In Later, either we review the brand new stuff, so the movies that come out like Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, or the Disney Plus shows like She-Hulk: Attorney at Law, or we go way back, and we make our way through the early days of the MCU, although I guess what we're up to now is probably the middle times. It's probably still early though, really, because it's still at a point when the MCU was finding its feet, trying to figure out exactly how it wanted to operate as a cinematic universe across multiple platforms besides movies. So we've gone back and we started with Iron Man that premiered way back in 2008, the beginning of this crazy world. And we've worked our way through a majority of movies mainly, for Phase 1 specifically. And we're nearing the end of Phase 2. I believe Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 was the last movie we touched on. But we're also delving into the TV shows because regardless of what Kevin Feige, whatever his name is, regardless of what the powers that be at Disney and Marvel say, there was a time between 2013 to 2018, maybe even 19, when the MCU was not limited to just movies. It did also include TV shows. TV shows licensed out to different streaming services, different network television, all existing in the MCU, but the priority was not that each TV show was an essential cog in the MCU Infinity Saga story or whatever. The rules are very simple. The TV shows could reference the movies and in many ways were influenced by how the movies operated. For example, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s whole format completely changed as a result of the Winter Soldier dismantling S.H.I.E.L.D. But nothing that happened in the TV shows would really ever affect what would happen in the movies. There would never be a defining moment in, say, Agent Carter that would influence the next Captain America movie or something like that. It was a symbiotic relationship where one symbiote was much more beneficial than the other. But it all was canon. It all was relevant. It all existed in this world. Once Disney slowly started to assimilate all these characters, throw off the rights, cast these other streaming services aside, and ingratiate all of this back into Marvel Studios, the results being that a lot of these shows were cancelled early, discarded as non-canon, couldn't work, especially in the whole Infinity War Endgame 5-year gap with Thanos wiping out half the universe. You can't have Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. take a 2-year break while it resolves that conflict before it can keep going on with its own shows. So that essential part of, yes, everything's connected, everything's part of the MCU, got very hazy to a point where it's like, okay, none of that happened, we're moving on. For me personally, though, I think it's important to always remember where you came from, always understand these building blocks that essentially helped the MCU find how it is, how it operates as a cinematic universe that exists across things besides movies. But I also think, as we're here in the Disney Plus world with WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier and all of that, I do think that this old stuff that the MCU would like you to think, oh, it's not essentially what happened, it's not really a part of our world. I think it works better. I think because it was not a priority to be a part of the big Kang the Conqueror storyline or whatever. It was just focused on telling its own story. Yes, it existed in the MCU. You could see in the background, like Avengers Tower or Stark Industries, things like that enhance the story and let you know, yes, this is in the MCU world. The Avengers do exist, but it's not a necessity. We're just telling our own little story here. And that's where the MCU, I think, has faltered in recent years. There's a lot of effort on the quality of the overarching story, but not necessarily on the quality of the littler stuff. But then putting quantity out over quality, meaning you got so much of this stuff, you're dropping the ball here. But there was a time where these TV shows existed just to tell stories, to tell, at the time, Marvel stories, which probably were never going to make it into the bigger stuff. But as a result of all the upheaval and all of that, a lot of this stuff feels unfinished, non-canon, however you want to say, which is a real shame because a lot of these TV shows are good. More than half are. And we haven't touched the failures yet. Don't worry, we're going to when we get to them. But we've already discussed Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., a really great show that just got better and better as it went along. And Agent Carter, a show that was so good that burnt really bright, really fast, but was never given the chance to really breathe, possibly because it existed before the streaming service was able to go, here's how you do it. But what we're getting into here is the first of the Netflix shows. We're talking about Daredevil. Now, if you don't know, the Netflix MCU shows are a series of shows that were focused on the street level Marvel characters. So characters that were really, at the time, you wouldn't consider they'd be flying off to other planets to fight Thanos, but they were the ones taking on the street smarts, the crime bosses and the Yakuza and all these other little things, which were never going to be more than sea-level threats, but still required superheroes to come in and save the day. In Netflix style, back in these early days, Daredevil and Friends, their seasons were dropped in binge mode. So a Friday would roll around, the whole first season of Daredevil's out. You can watch it all over the weekend. It was more gritty, it was more violent, it wasn't with that Disney sheen that you would normally get. But in my opinion, what surprised me and surprised a lot of people was just how good the quality was for these shows, how great the characters were that we were being introduced to. And I think, as is the case with today as well, we're living through a lot of it at the moment where it's hard for you to really get into a show on a streaming channel because it's all about the numbers and how much it costs to make these shows. So it's risky to get involved in any sort of show because you don't know if it's going to make it past that definitive first season. Around the time of the Marvel Netflix shows, though, it was pretty much Daredevil was a surprise hit that I think really bolstered Netflix because you already got that that love for Marvel, which brought a lot of people in to watch the show straight away already. But then from word of mouth, it was just like, this is just a really good show. Even if you take off the Marvel thing, this is just a really good, gritty character development study of Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock. And Daredevil itself launched Netflix's original goal of doing its own street-level Avengers, which is a series of shows focusing on different characters, which would then cross over into the Defenders. Not as successful as they would like, not necessarily their fault, a lot of issues here or there, but for the majority of it, it would not have started if Daredevil itself hadn't been just so good right from the get-go. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Daredevil is no longer on Netflix, but it's on Disney+, as is most of the civilized world at the moment, apparently. Daredevil tells the story of Matt Murdock. He's played by Charlie Cox. He is a blind lawyer. When he was young, he went blind. He is a lawyer for the people, operating with his best friend Foggy Nelson and Murdock. They take on the cases, a lot of cases pro bono. They're all about helping the little people. But aside from that, Matt Murdock is also taken to the streets as a vigilante. Not at the moment Daredevil, but based on him losing his sight and all of that, he hooked up with a blind mentor called Stick. He's learned to harness his abilities. So yes, he can't see, but all his other senses are heightened. And he's out there to deliver justice when the law itself can't do it. Through the course of his first season, he starts to operate more aggressively. What's great about Daredevil in that beginning was he did not do the arrow stick, where at the end of the first episode, he's got his Daredevil suit, he's got Team Daredevil, and he's taken on bad guys every week. That first season, his entire outfit is just him wearing black, and he's got a bandana over his face that goes over his eyes, which is pretty scary because it's like he can't see out of that thing, but that's okay because he doesn't need to. He does not put on that Daredevil outfit until the last episode of the first 13 season run. His primary goal in that first season is taking down Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, played by Vincent D'Onofrio. A really great setup in that first episode is you do not meet Kingpin, you do not see him, you really don't really see him until the third episode, but you see his reach. It focuses on how he has his hand in corrupt businessmen like Leland Owsley. He's involved with the Yakuza, with the Chinese Triad, with Russian gangsters, with dirty cops, with petty crime itself. Like the Kingpin basically controls Hell's Kitchen, and Daredevil has to take him down. But how? They're two unmovable forces, both very flawed people. Kingpin is one of the best villains ever in the MCU. He's incredibly well developed over that first season, to a point where, aside from Kilgrave and Jessica Jones, there never was a better villain in the Netflix world. And great, because when he was gone, his absence was felt, so they brought him back for season 3. It's a huge, violent, gritty struggle between these two, where Matt develops himself as a hero as well, not just a beat-em-up vigilante, but someone who can inspire the people of Hell's Kitchen as well. It's really great stuff, really impressive television. Travesty that it was never really recognized in any sort of awards capacity because, it's a superhero show. It was so much more than that. And yes, it existed in the MCU, so they'd reference like, oh yeah, things are different since the Battle of New York. Like, oh, you look as powerful as that guy with that hammer. But it wasn't stuff that was thrown in that drew you out of the show. It was just stuff to go, yes, it exists in this world. But it's not important. It's not important to be part of the big cog of the MCU. It's just this little thing that exists. And that's what I think, back in those early days, what made the MCU so great as a cinematic universe. It wasn't focused on making sure everything was connected in a meaningful way. It was just focused on going, this world exists, all these people exist in this world, but they don't necessarily step on each other. They don't necessarily have to boost each other up. It's all just stuff that complements each other in meaningful ways. I really think Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock was so good. Vincent D'Onofrio's Wilson Fisk was so good. And I think it really surprised people just how great it was. There was a time, I think, when Netflix in those early days, what was the phrase? The phrase was "dump it on Netflix," which was like a Netflix original movie is just crap and cheap. Netflix shows are like, yeah, whatever, dump it on Netflix. I remember I didn't really give a shit about Netflix when this show came out, but I was pushed because it's like, oh, if I want to be a part of this MCU, if I want to see every aspect of it, I should probably watch this show. But even then, right up until Daredevil premiered, I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it. I think what happened was my mother got Netflix as part of an Optus deal and was like, hey, I got an extra account. You want to watch Netflix for 30 days? Here you go. I was like, okay, I guess that Daredevil show's coming. I'll watch it. That first episode, the season's premiering this Friday, but I got plans. I'm going out with my friends. Okay. They haven't picked me up yet for whatever we were doing. I guess I'll watch that first episode before I go anywhere. Holy shit, this first episode is really good. And I remember as we were driving off that evening, I can't remember. I assume we were going out. I guess we were going to a pub or something. I would not shut up. I was telling anybody who would listen, guys, this Daredevil show, that first episode was pretty great. I'm hooked. Can we cancel our plans? Because I want to go home and watch it. And then before that weekend was over, I watched the whole thing. I binged it all. I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. And it became a new tradition for me. I don't need Netflix normally because I've got a lot of it on DVDs. And this was back in the day when Netflix would release its shows on DVD. These days now, good luck trying to get a streaming show on DVD. If you're Amazon, I love you, Amazon. Thank you for releasing your shows. And thank you, Paramount Plus, for releasing Star Trek on DVD. But if you're Disney, good luck releasing any of that shit on DVD. Thanks a lot, guys. You suck. But it became a point where Daredevil was so good that I was hooked. I was ready for any show in the MCU that would be released on Netflix. I would renew my Netflix subscription for that one weekend, binge watch whatever show it was, cancel it immediately. Especially when I heard that Daredevil was just the first in a ambitious plan to do the Defenders. Unfortunately, Daredevil did the Iron Man thing in Phase 1, where it was a failure of its own success. Daredevil was so good that they rushed out that season 2 very quick, rather than follow that original plan of just get one season out of each of their Defenders crew, do the Defenders, and then we'll see what happens there. Meaning you got to season 2 of Daredevil, didn't really know what they wanted to do, rather than just milk that Daredevil success. As a result, it was more focused on building the Defenders rather than capturing what made Daredevil so good. Some of Daredevil season 2 worked really well, bringing in the Punisher, which of course led to the Punisher getting its own show. But otherwise, it was sort of like, I don't know, I don't understand what's happening here. What worked really well for Daredevil season 3 was the Defenders Past. We got to a point where it's like, I don't know if we're ever going to do a Defenders season 2. There's rumblings in the background that we're not even going to last that long on Netflix. Our time is short, so let's do our final third season of Daredevil and focus on what makes Daredevil so good, which is that Matt Murdock versus Wilson Fisk thing. Let's bring in Bullseye. Let's really strip Daredevil back to where he's good. Let's even take away his friggin' suit and put him back in that black outfit. And what made for a surprisingly solid, fantastic final season of Daredevil that rivaled that first season. Daredevil sort of finished not with a whimper or with a bang. It wasn't unlucky enough that when the hammer came down and just started cancelling all these shows, it wasn't like Luke Cage or Iron Fist where they'd planned for more and didn't get to do more. Daredevil ends satisfactorily, I think. If you just watch Daredevil, I think you'd be satisfied. You might be a little confused between season 2 and 3 if you don't watch the Defenders, because season 3 opens with like, Matt Murdock's alive! And it's like, was he dead? I don't understand that. But now we exist in a world where Daredevil's coming back. The rights have passed. The part of Netflix's Marvel crashing and burning because of Disney was they held those rights on those characters. Disney was not allowed to use Daredevil for about 2 years. But now that the time has passed, and already we've got Matt Murdock showing up in Spider-Man No Way Home and in She-Hulk, and even a surprise appearance from Kingpin in Hawkeye. It's still up in the air about whether these are the same characters from the Netflix show. It depends who you ask. I think it's both yes and no. I think they're trying to have their cake and eat it too. Yes, these characters are the same characters from that Daredevil show. Yes, they are those people that evolved. They're your Daredevil. They're your Kingpin. But what happened will not necessarily affect what they do with the characters going forward. We're about to... When I say about to, I don't know when this show will come out, but there is a Daredevil show, Daredevil Born Again, coming to Disney+, which stars Matt Murdock, played by Charlie Cox, stars Wilson Fisk, played by Vincent D'Onofrio, and for all intents and purposes, it is both a continuation and a reboot of these characters. Who knows what it's going to be? I liked what I've seen of Daredevil so far in Spider-Man and She-Hulk. I'm indifferent to the Kingpin appearing on Hawkeye, but I don't know how it's going to operate in a Disney Plus world and in this constant need that everything has to be important to the Kang the Conqueror multiverse saga. I want a Daredevil show. I want Charlie Cox to come back. I couldn't give two shits if Daredevil ever meets who's playing at the moment, Thor or Sam Wilson's Captain America. I'm happy for him to stay at his street level. I think that's unlikely, but you never know. As I record this, there's a bit of a slowdown on Marvel Disney Plus releasing. Captain Marvel 2 has been pushed back to the end of November. Secret Invasion is not being released until June, I think. I don't know. So we'll have to wait and see. But as a old-timey point in the MCU's history, Daredevil is a solid A+. I loved that show. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was a real good showcasing of how you can make a show in the MCU and not be defined by the MCU. And it's one of those things which is like, whether you say it's canon or not, to me it always will be, especially if you're going to bring back the same actors to play these characters. I think we're happy here. If you've never seen these shows, check them out. As I said, they're on Disney+. I think they're a solid example of a time when the MCU was not focused on having everything connected and was just going, here, tell us some stories, let's see what happens. Holy shit, we just hit the jackpot with some really good storytelling and some really good actors playing some really good characters. I love Daredevil. Daredevil's one of my favorite entries in the MCU, one of my favorite shows. Haven't seen it, check it out. 9 out of 10 from me. Would be a 10 out of 10 if we didn't have that season 2 misstep, but hey, these things happen. Thank you very much for listening. Hope you've enjoyed. When I get back to the MCU, when it's not a review, if I get to it before Guardians 3 comes out, we'll be looking at Avengers Age of Ultron, which is interesting. I have a love-hate relationship with that one, and we'll get into that when I analyze it. Otherwise, I'll be back next week. Later in the week, you won't have a Tuesday ep because I'll be postponing so I can give you the review of the Super Mario Brothers movie when I see it, or Super Mario Bros movie. I don't know. I don't really care. I don't have this loving relationship with Mario that everybody else does. It's kind of like Sonic the Hedgehog. I'm indifferent to him. I'm aware of him. I enjoy his games when I play them, but they haven't defined my childhood. So I will probably have a lighter reaction to it than a lot of other people will. But I will also be very scrupulous to the Chris Pratt Mario because I'm with everybody else, and that why is Chris Pratt voicing Mario? From what I've seen, it doesn't sound like he's really embraced the character in a way that's going to make a lot of people happy. Not in the way that Jack Black or Keegan-Michael Key has with their characters, but we'll just have to wait and see. But that's next week's problem. So until then, I love and appreciate you as always. I hope you've enjoyed us once again diving in the MCU, and I will catch you on the next Spliced In Later. Adios, muchachos.